Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to daily Bhagavad Gita class. So today we're going to discuss a very important verse. So let's start with the darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Mai ki jai, Nitai Chaitanya ki jai, Parshuram Bhagwan ki jai, Vaman Dev ki jai, Panchatatva Bhagwan ki jai, Giri Govardhan ki jai. Let's do the prayers. Om Agyanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we're doing the chapter number 18. This is like the final chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It's also called as the conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. Okay, so tell me, how many of you would like to know about what is the consequence of surrendering to Krishna? How many of you would like to know what is the consequence of not surrendering to Krishna? Okay, so Krishna is going to say, thank you very much for your responses. Krishna is going to say exactly what is it that we get if we surrender to Krishna, and what happens if we do not follow the instructions of Krishna. What happens? He just says that very clearly in just one verse. Let's see that. Today we are doing the chapter number 18, verse number 58. Machchitta sarva durgani matprasadat tarishyasi atachetvam ahankaran nashroshyasi vinangshyasi. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So the key word that is used here, let's take two keywords. First word is tarishyasi. The second one is vinangshyasi. Tarishyasi means you will be liberated, or you will be passing over the different problems of conditioned life. Vinangshyasi means you will be lost. So two paths. So one path is getting over through all the obstacles of the conditioned life. The second thing is just getting lost in the 8,400,000 species of life. That's what Krishna is saying. So what is he simply saying here is that if you just simply become conscious of me, matchittaha, that means become conscious of me, then what happens? You will pass all the obstacles of life. Otherwise, atachetvam ahankara nashroshyasi. That means if out of false ego you do not listen. So he say, if you do not listen because of false ego, he's saying vinangshyasi. Vinangshyasi means you will be lost. How many of you want to be not lost? How many of you want to be liberated? Please raise your hands. Okay, so that's what the Supreme Personality of God is saying. Okay, thank you. Okay, let me explain a little bit in detail here. So you see, a person in full Krishna consciousness is not unduly anxious about executing the duties of his existence. So what this basically means is, we are staying in the material world and we have some duties here, correct? So we have to follow all the duties perfectly well. If we do not follow the duties very well, you know what happens? Let me read from the purport. Right? Here it says, no one should be carried away by the false ego of the bodily concept of life. And one should not falsely think himself to be independent of the laws of material nature or free to act. What does that mean? We are under strict material laws. Very simple. Just like we are in a government, right? So we have to follow the rules of the government. So if you are in India if you are in Karnataka, if you are in Andhra Pradesh, if you are in some state, you have to follow the rules of the state. You have to follow the law of the land. It's compulsory. It's not an opt-in. You cannot say, I don't agree to this. I don't want to participate in this. You have to do it. So, for example, if you're in Dubai, you have to follow the strict rules of Dubai. If you're in Saudi Arabia, you have to follow the strict rules of Saudi Arabia. If they say you must not do this, if you do this, you will be punished, you cannot do it. Am I right? Similarly, in this material world, there are some rules. They are called as the laws of material nature. So, who decides these laws of material nature? These laws of material nature, are they man-made? What do you think? The constitution is man-made, but how about the laws of the world? Are they man-made? Where are they coming from? They're coming from the Vedas. Yeah, they're made by God. Dharmam tu sakshat Bhagavad pranito. That means this dharma is not manufactured by a human being. Dharma is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dharma is the instructions of the Supreme Lord given in the Vedas. So everybody who is there in this material world must follow all these prescribed duties and act. Nobody can act independently. If they act independently, what happens? If you act independently in Dubai, in Saudi Arabia, in Australia, what happens? If you act independently in Singapore, if you act independently in India, what happens? You will be punished by the law of the land. Similarly, in this world, if we act as per our own whims, then we will be punished under the strict material laws. So here in the Prabhupada writes, but as soon as he acts in Krishna consciousness, he is liberated, free from the material perplexities. So that means if you start to act in Krishna consciousness, you are getting out of this loss of material nature. How many of you want to be out of this loss of material nature? But you don't want to be a part of this. You don't want to be punished by the laws of material nature. So if you don't want to be punished by the stringent laws of material nature, the solution is to act in Krishna consciousness. If you act in Krishna consciousness, you become liberated and you become free from the material perplexities. See, the difficulties that we are getting in our life, the different types of difficulties. What are they? Difficulties which are coming because of our body and mind. That's the category number 1. Difficulties given by other living entities. That is category number 2. The difficulties given by the nature. Category number 3. 3 categories of difficulties. What are they? See, you see, physical diseases. It can be headache, can be any kind of disease, bodily diseases. Sometimes it's deeper, it's inside here, right? It's not physically manifesting. That's right. It's called adhyatmika. It's not manifesting in the body, but it's inside our mind. Okay, it's emotional. Somewhere I'm troubled. I'm feeling very down. Okay, that's emotional. Okay, that's one category. Other one is, you are fine. Everything is fine, but there is someone who doesn't want you to be peaceful. Somebody comes and says something to you. Somebody comes and does some harm to you. Some physical abuse, verbal abuse, any kind of abuse. That is second category. Third category is there is a huge rainfall, there's a flood, there's an earthquake. Okay, all of this acts of God, they call it, as per the insurance, right? So these kind of supernatural activities or the nature does some kind of things, right? Like floods, rains, heavy rains, earthquakes. You can even consider pandemics in that category. So these are material perplexities. But when we start to act in Krishna consciousness, we're getting liberated from all of this. And we become fully liberated. Therefore, the recommendation is this. One should note very carefully that one who is not active in Krishna consciousness is losing himself in the material whirlpool, in the ocean of birth and death. So you can ask, what's the difference between the loss of material nature and the loss of the land? You see, which one is more strict? What do you think? Loss of nature or loss of material nature or the loss of the land? Which one are more strict? What do you think? Loss of material nature. Why? You see, the reason is the loss of the land. The worst thing that they can do to you is what? What is the worst punishment as per the loss of land? Capital punishment. They can kill you once. But the loss of material nature, what about them? How many times can they kill us? What about the loss of material nature? Loss of material nature can put us into perpetual cycle of birth and death. How about that? And what's the difference between hanging a person once versus hanging a person a crore times or 100 crore times, giving a punishment to die for 100 crore times? How about that? Which one is stricter now? You get that? What's more strict? So here it's just like, you're going to get punished only once. But then here it's repeated birth and death. We're getting in a cycle of repeated birth and repeated death. That means every time you're born, you have to die. Every time you're born, you have to die. Every time you have to go through the entire cycle, the complete pain, right? Of attachment and detachment. That is of union and separation. Union, separation, union, separation. See that? That's what Krishna is saying in this verse, that if, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but acting through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. That means if we do not follow the instructions given by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, what happens? We'll be lost. What's the example for that? Let's just take the example of Mahabharata. So what happened in Mahabharata? So it was a war between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Which of these two listened to the instructions of Lord Krishna? Pandavas or Kauravas?
Pandavas. Sorry, Pandavas, Prabhuji.
That's right. Pandavas heard the instructions of Supreme Lord and they were fine. Krishna is saying, you'll be saved. He said, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life. Yeah. So what happened to them in Mahabharata? They had to fight the war of Mahabharata, the Kurukshetra war, against a bigger army, against the most powerful generals like Bhishma, Drona, Karna. But they succeeded. They won the war, right? And who did not follow? Kauravas. What happened to them at the end? How many of the Kauravas survived at the end?
Only nobody actually.
Yeah, none of them. None of them. You see, that's what Krishna is saying. If you do not follow my instructions out of false ego, you will be lost. So the lesson that we can take from Mahabharata is Arjuna followed the instructions of Krishna. The Pandavas followed the instructions of Krishna and they were safeguarded from this material whirlpool, that is from the Kurukshetra war. And the Kauravas, they did not follow. They neglected the instructions of Lord Krishna. Krishna repeatedly gave instruction to Yudhishthir Maharaj. He also gave instructions to Duryodhana saying clearly, do not do this. But Duryodhana, why did he not follow? Out of false ego. That's what Krishna is saying here. Athachetvam ahankaran nashroshyasi. Just like Duryodhana. Why should I hear what Krishna is saying? I know better than him. This is called ahankara. If we do like that, then vinangshyasi, then we'll be lost. What happened to Duryodhana? He was killed by Bhima. And all the generals, the great generals like Bhishma Pitamaha, Karna, Drona, all of them were finished. Just because they did not listen to what Sri Krishna said. See? That's the point, dear devotees. That's what here Prabhupada is saying. A person who acts in Krishna consciousness is free to act because everything is prompted by Krishna from within and confirmed by the spiritual master. So, person acting in Krishna consciousness, he is following what Krishna is saying. So, you can ask like, Arjuna had Krishna to instruct, but I don't have Krishna to instruct. That's not true. That's the reason is Krishna is always there within the heart. Is there internally in the form of Paramatma. Externally, he is manifesting in the form of the spiritual master. So Krishna is giving instructions from within. If you're Krishna conscious, Krishna will give you instructions from within, what you should be doing next. Or your guru will be giving instructions. The spiritual master will give you instructions that do this, do this, do this, do this. So that is not different from the instructions of Krishna, because it is Krishna himself who manifests in the form of the spiritual master. So therefore, we should act according to that. We should act according to the instructions of the spiritual master, instructions of Krishna in the form of Paramatma within, from the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, and not act whimsically. So what happens when we act whimsically? Let me tell you another example. Okay, this is the case of the demigods and the demons. So the demigods and the demons, they collaborate once on a project. And the project is called the churning of the milk ocean. So they both take up this Vasuki snake as a rope for churning. And they take the Mandara mountain as the churning rod. And they place that, and then they start to churn. So at that time, Lord Vishnu is giving instructions to the Devatas, the demigods. And the demigods are following every single instruction given by the Supreme Lord. If the Supreme Lord is saying, take the head of Vasuki, they are ready to take the head. If the Supreme Lord is saying, take the tail of the snake, they are ready to take. When the Supreme Lord is saying, whatever things that are coming from here, I will tell you which one to take, which one to leave. And they're ready to listen. He says, okay, take this. Airavat, take it. Something else comes. He said, leave it. And they're ready to leave it. They're not saying, come on, it's such a nice thing. I want it. You're wrong. Your judgment is wrong. I know better than you. I want it. They're not saying that. They're just following what Krishna is saying. And what happened at the end? When the nectar came, right? Dhanvantari came with a nectar, pot of nectar, and the demons, they cannot wait, right? They snatched it away. And this, they thought they will distribute, and they start fighting amongst themselves. And then what happened? The Supreme Lord came in the form of Mohini. He came in the form of Mohini, and what did he do? He tricked them. What did he do? He said, okay, please stand in one line. He comes in a beautiful form, okay, beautiful lady. And then he says, please come and stand in a line. And then first let me finish with the Devatas, then I will come to you. They said, yes, yes, yes. And then the Lord takes it and he gives to all the Devatas. And finished. And he finishes that pot, right? At that time, we also see that two demons come, one demon comes, right? And then he just drinks a little bit and comes here, and then the Supreme Lord sends a Sudarshan Chakra, and then his head is separated from the body, and then it becomes Rahu and Ketu. So, but the point here is, that the demons, they didn't get anything. And the reason they didn't get anything, they didn't get the nectar, is because they did not listen to what the Supreme Personality of God had said. So, what is the lesson that we can take from this? Anyone? What is the lesson that we can take from this story? Anybody can try. What's the lesson that we can take from the story of the Devatas and the Asuras trying to get the nectar? What is the conclusion?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Uh, Obedience to the Lord is the key. Like even in childhood, when we don't listen to our parents, we want to rebel. Then after many years, when we understand, yes, Papa theek keh rahe the, Mummy theek keh rahe, we regret. So if you don't want to, I mean, we can learn it from our material life. So the same thing follows. You cannot escape the laws of nature. So the best thing is to be obedient and to be disciplined.
Thank you, Mataji. You brought up a very nice analogy here.
Hare
Just
Krishna.
like how parents, they tell us something, they keep saying something, and then we get so bugged up, isn't it? Happens all the time. And we say, Mummy, Papa, you don't know anything. Don't underestimate me like that. You're insulting me. Why are you saying all that? So why are we saying that? Out of what? Out of what? What is actually stopping us from hearing to them? What is that thing? What do you call
False
that?
ego.
False ego. Yes. Out of false ego, we do not accept what our parents say. And they keep saying that. See, I know you well. Please try to understand. You're like this. You're like this. We don't take it. We say, no, no, no. You're insulting me. You're wrong. But later, after many decades, we realize that, okay, they were right. They were right all along. I should have listened to what they said, right? So simply, just like that, we have to follow what Supreme Lord says. Anybody else wants to add? What is the lesson that we can take from this story of the Pandavas versus Kauravas, or the story of the demons versus the demigods? Anyone? Okay. Here is the thing, right?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mat.
We should avoid the rules of God, Prabhuji.
If we don't avoid, what happens? What do we lose?
Again, we'll come into this material world. Same thing will happen. But that old age people.
We'll come back to this material world and suffer. What happened to the Kauravas?
They entered into the heavenly planet because they fight in the Kurukshetra war. No?
Actually, that's right. But that's a different angle. That's a different tangent, okay? They go back to Godhead. The Kauravas, they go back to Godhead. That's given in the Bhagavatam. But if you think about it in a material, just think about materially. They wanted to rule Hastinapura. They couldn't do that. So in that way, they got destroyed. Yes? Let's just take that angle. Let's not take into the complete angle. Right? So they didn't get what they want to do. Similarly, the demons also, they wanted nectar. How many of you want nectar? They want to become immortal, but in a different way. We also want to become immortal, but in a different way. We want the real immortality, not like how the demigods are seeking immortality, just to be extending their life span. That's not what we want. We want to be truly immortal in the sense that we don't be born again and we don't die again. That's what we want. So if we want that pot of nectar, that pot of nectar is actually the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that pot of nectar is Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so how many of you want this pot of nectar? The Bhagavad Gita, the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? How many of you are ready to follow now what Krishna is going to say? Whatever Krishna says, we are going to follow. Simple resolve, simple resolution in life. Whatever Krishna says from within, whatever my spiritual master says, I shall follow. Whatever Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna's instructions say, I shall follow. That's it. Simple formula, right? All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Okay, let's stop the class here. Thank you very much.